The story begins with an authoritative voice. Poseidon is angry and demands that those in front of him kneel down. He tells them to return the map and his belongings. The boy wearing gold-rimmed glasses is named Kevin. He has an IQ of 210. Not only did he dare to steal the map of the universe from God, but he also dared to trick the Devil King. What made an ordinary child become the most wanted man in the three worlds? And in the end, how will that powerful map change the fate of humanity? Kevin is passionate about history. His greatest daily hobby is to hold a book and read. He studies the world's historical civilizations. His room is filled with models of ancient artifacts from different countries. Even on his birthday, he refused his parents' idea of a party. He asked them to take him to see Stonehenge. Although this was boring in his family's eyes, he was very excited. He was very pleased with this birthday gift. His passion for history made him different from his peers. However, that also meant that very few people could truly understand his inner world. Even his family often ignored his feelings. However, no matter what, he still did not change his mind. His heart was lonely, but also full of romance. That night, Kevin accidentally opened the wardrobe in his room. Unexpectedly, what appeared before his eyes was another world. He walked inside in amazement, but as soon as he set foot on the strange land, he saw a group of soldiers in the distance chasing a Viking pirate. They were coming towards him. He panicked and ran towards the wardrobe door behind him, but unexpectedly, the pirate also followed Kevin back to his room. Then he closed the door tightly. At this time, Kevin was just a child. Even the pirate was extremely confused. Seeing that, Kevin immediately ran downstairs to find his parents for help, but neither of them paid attention because he often had strange ideas. Kevin's father seemed annoyed and interrupted him. His father even said casually that it was just a dream. He would be fine when he woke up. Kevin looked at his parents intently at the TV screen. Then he could only helplessly return to his room. At this time, the strange world in the wardrobe had disappeared, but looking at the pirate, he was still bewildered. Kevin suddenly asked about the history of the Vikings, but because of the language barrier, he remained silent. Immediately after, Kevin was stunned by the scene before his eyes. A group of strange people appeared. He excitedly expressed his desire to go exploring with them. Before leaving, he did not forget to say goodbye to his parents. Then he rushed hard into the wall. The result was predictable. He hit his head on the wall so hard that he was injured. After Kevin woke up, his parents wanted to talk to him. They didn't want to interfere with his hobbies before, but after this incident, they felt that he was too indulged, so they advised him to put down his history books. Instead of being immersed in the past, he should embrace technology and look to the future. However, he still believed in what he had seen. At the same time, he didn't understand why his parents didn't believe him, so he refused to listen to their advice. Their first conversation ended in a stalemate. That night, Kevin held a flashlight and shone it into the wardrobe, but the door remained unchanged. He turned off the light in disappointment and prepared to go to bed. However, the next second, a strange noise suddenly came from inside the wardrobe. Then a group of strange people pushed the door open and entered. He quickly turned on the light. He saw 5 people in strange clothes in front of him. The 5 people breathed a sigh of relief when they saw that there was only one child in the room. Then they took out a map and they began to discuss the plan. From their words, Kevin knew that these 5 people were a group of thieves. However, what they stole was not ordinary gold, silver, and jewels, but the treasure of the Supreme Being. It was the map in their hands. This map recorded all the time-space portals. In order to escape the pursuit of the Supreme Being, they accidentally entered the space portal. They opened the door and entered Kevin's room. It seemed that the wardrobe was also one of those portals. Just when Kevin wanted to learn more, a loud explosion suddenly came from inside the wardrobe. The Supreme Being appeared in the room. He angrily demanded that the group of thieves return the treasure. Although very scared, the leader of the group, Penelope, was still determined not to return the map. Seeing the Supreme Being's anger rising, a thief immediately signaled his accomplices to push the wall behind. That was also an exit marked on the map. The 5 people did not say another word and immediately jumped down. At this time, Kevin also wanted to join in. After a little hesitation, he finally decided to jump into the portal, and so his time-traveling adventure officially began. After a moment of dizziness, when traveling through space, everyone landed on a large ship. Seeing the boy Kevin following, the 5 thieves were surprised for a moment, but then they no longer cared about him, because the most important thing now was to determine which era and location they were in. Kevin looked around in confusion when he saw the pirate flag fluttering in the distance and the woman in ancient costumes standing at the bow of the ship. He immediately realized that this was Macau in 1810. At this time, the notorious female pirate Madame Chum was having her final confrontation with the British Navy. Kevin immediately became excited, and he eagerly shared this historical knowledge with the group of thieves. But just then, the sailors discovered this group of intruders. They immediately attacked the group of thieves fiercely. Kevin was unable to dodge, so he was hit by an arrow, but he didn't feel any pain. This made him even more certain that his father was right. It was all just a dream. In a panic, he ran after the group of thieves and hid in a compartment. Unexpectedly, this was not the entrance to the time portal. Seeing the room full of gold and silver treasures, the thieves' instincts immediately arose. But at that moment, the sound of cannons outside began to subside. Then Madame Chum led her subordinates into the compartment. She had an angry expression as if she was questioning something, but Kevin didn't understand at all. However, he soon discovered something strange. The group of thieves could converse fluently with Madame Chung. Could it be that they could speak Cantonese? One of the thieves noticed Kevin's confusion, so he put a translator hat on Kevin's head. Unexpectedly, this action saved everyone's lives. Kevin saw Madame Chung's wary expression and immediately stepped forward and transformed into her little fan. Based on his historical knowledge, he suggested that Madame Chung change course immediately. They should sail towards the nearby shallow waters. This way, they could take advantage of the pirate ship's low water level to avoid being surrounded by the British Navy. Although Madame Chung doubted Kevin's identity, she still decided to take a risk and try it. Unexpectedly, this method was actually effective. They successfully escaped the enemy's encirclement. Madame Chung immediately praised Kevin's intelligence and advised him to stay as her strategist. However, Kevin said that he only knew about this part of history. The method to break the trap was actually her own idea. He just made it happen sooner. Fortunately, the group of thieves found the time portal. Seeing this, Kevin quickly followed them and jumped into the sea. The next second, they landed on a soft lawn. After the incident, the group of thieves began to look at Kevin differently. They thought he had the ability to predict the future, so they looked at him with hope. They hoped that he could help them find the treasure. At that moment, Kevin suddenly shouted in surprise. He saw the scene of Stonehenge being built. For a history enthusiast like him, this was truly a priceless treasure. Perhaps he could solve the mystery of thousands of years. He excitedly ran to the supervisor. He eagerly asked them why they built Stonehenge, but the truth made him extremely disappointed. Stonehenge was not an astronomical chart as he imagined, but just an entertainment for the ancients to kill time. In addition to Stonehenge, they also built structures such as wooden rings, straw rings, and messy stone rings. Kevin's heart was broken into 8 pieces. It turned out that the formation of Stonehenge was so sketchy. That night, everyone sat around the fire and chatted. Kevin was very curious about the past of the group of thieves. Leader Penelope immediately told Kevin about their identity. In fact, the 5 of them were not thieves, but employees of the Supreme Being. But the truth proved that working is inevitable. When pressured too much, they dared to steal the Supreme Being's treasure. So they stole the time map and decided to quit their jobs to find the treasure. But this action angered the Supreme Being. He launched a worldwide hunt for them. Fortunately, he did not have a time map to guide him, so it was not easy for him to find them. In addition, each person in the group had special abilities. For example, reading other people's thoughts, disguise, and superhuman strength. Then they began to discuss the next theft plan. However, Kevin did not agree, especially when the group of thieves intended to take away artifacts of great archaeological value. Kevin's objection and criticism made the group of thieves extremely upset. They decided to take him home tomorrow. At the same time, the Devil King in Hell also received the news that the time map had been stolen. He was immediately very excited. If he couldn't get the treasure from the hands of the Supreme Being, why couldn't he steal it from a few thieves? As long as he got hold of the time map, his dream of world domination would definitely come true. While he was dreaming about his cruel universe, his subordinates brought him good news. The Supreme Being had determined the location of the group of thieves. That place was Kevin's house. The Devil King immediately ordered the Huntress Fiona to get the time map at all costs. The next day, the time gate opened. Kevin followed the group of thieves through the gate. Unexpectedly, he didn't return to his bedroom as they wished, but he went with them to the time of ancient Greece. He stood on the top of the mountain and looked at the buildings in the distance. The result surprised him so much that he cursed. He saw the Trojan horse with his own eyes. Penelope was also very excited because the target they wanted to steal was this giant wooden horse. When night fell, they arrived at the city gate. The group stood looking at the wooden horse and they discussed enthusiastically. They discussed how to steal it. Someone suggested cutting the wooden horse into 8 pieces and then transporting each piece. But this idea was immediately opposed by Kevin because there were Greek soldiers inside the wooden horse. This was a famous event in the Trojan War. After hearing Kevin's explanation, the group of thieves immediately lost interest. The first theft failed miserably, making Penelope extremely upset. She ordered her friends to quickly find a new way out. But at that time, the soldiers inside the wooden horse could not bear it any longer. They opened the small door at the back of the wooden horse. Then they invited the group of thieves to immediately go inside before the Trojan soldiers discovered anything unusual. Otherwise, their plan would be exposed. Kevin finally got to see the inside structure of the wooden horse. The sophistication made him admire it. At this time, a soldier began to doubt the battle plan. He asked if anyone was really stupid enough to drag this wooden horse into the city. However, Kevin firmly affirmed that this plan would succeed because this was an event recorded in history. But no one expected that the soldiers guarding Troy would completely act without common sense. They saw the wooden horse standing outside the fort gate all day, so they got bored and decided to burn it. The group immediately panicked. Would this time travel end so quickly? Penelope fell into despair, but Kevin consoled himself that this was just a dream. But was it really like that? As the fire grew bigger and bigger, the Greek warriors decided to get out of the wooden horse. They fought to the death with the Trojan soldiers. But the next second, the situation suddenly changed. changed. An officer in the city suddenly appeared. He was attracted by the exquisite beauty of the wooden horse, so he immediately ordered the fire to be put out. Then he brought the giant wooden horse into the city. History finally continued on its original course. After the group was sure of safety, Kevin and the group of thieves left the wooden horse. Penelope was still in a panic, so she kept scolding Kevin for putting the group in danger. But he thought that all of these were events recorded in history books. No matter what, the outcome would not change. But was that really true? According to Penelope, a group of people not mentioned in history traveled through time to important historical moments. Even the smallest action could cause a butterfly effect. It could even change the trajectory and direction of history. However, Kevin still thought that he was in a dream, so he completely ignored her worries. The group decided to split up for a while. Penelope decided to go with the other members to search for something valuable before finding the next entrance. Meanwhile, Kevin obediently waited for them to return. But as soon as the group of thieves left, a mysterious girl appeared before him. She claimed that she was cursed, but she could see the future. Kevin thought for a moment and immediately recognized this girl as Cassandra, a Trojan princess with the ability to prophesy. But she only existed in myths. Kevin was immediately confused. Was this really history, or was this an ancient mythical world? During the conversation, Cassandra suddenly told Kevin a prophecy. She said that he would go on many wonderful adventures with the group of thieves, and they would create countless beautiful memories. But she also reminded him that he had to stay with the group of thieves in the future, because together they would save the world. While Kevin was still feeling in disbelief, the group of thieves returned with their loot. They were excitedly preparing to take him home. However, they did not know that Kevin's home was facing an unprecedented danger. A battle to seize the time map was also taking place silently in the dark. He did not expect that just because he had made a time travel trip, when he returned, his home would no longer exist. Kevin looked at the strangers dressed in rags, huddled in a thatched hut in the white snow, and he stood there, stunned. This place was completely different from the home in his memory. However, the group of thieves affirmed that they had entered the correct coordinates. Then, they quickly waved goodbye to him. But when the group of thieves looked back at the poor boy, they could not bear to leave. They began to recall the details before traveling. As a result, they discovered that they had entered the correct coordinates, but the time was wrong. 2 years later, Kevin's parents settled in this place. Just like that, Kevin and the group of thieves set off again. However, he did not realize that on the vast snowfield, a large rock suddenly emitted a dazzling light, like a pair of strange eyes gradually waking up, and that coordinate was Kevin's future home. Accompanied by a loud explosion, Kevin and everyone fell into a strange primeval forest. Although he could not return to his familiar room, he was very happy. He did not want this beautiful dream to end so soon. So he promised the group of thieves that he would not cause trouble. He would do his best to help the team. In this situation, the group of thieves could not leave this tailed boy alone. They asked Kevin to find a way to determine the current era. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned and walked into the forest. The group of thieves waited for him to return without understanding what was going on. Unexpectedly, behind the forest was an architectural complex. Based on the technique and style of the houses, Kevin determined that they had arrived at the Mayan civilization period. Hearing this, the group of thieves eagerly prepared. They predicted that there would definitely be many treasures here. However, Kevin reminded them that history books recorded that the Mayans had a tradition of sacrificing people to the gods. Especially strangers were very easy to become their sacrifices. They thought that after hearing this, the group of thieves would be afraid. Unexpectedly, Penelope still did not give up. She only asked everyone to be more vigilant and careful when acting. Then they continued to move towards the primitive tribe, but soon after, they came face to face with the tribe's residents. The guard leader observed the group of strangers in front of them and immediately asked about their background. Unexpectedly, this time the translator hat saved Kevin's life. He accidentally said that strangers were just friends he had not met. Hearing this, the guard leader's expression became even more serious. The group of thieves were worried. They still remembered Kevin's words that strangers would be captured as sacrifices, but they did not expect that the Mayans here were far different from the historical records. These Mayans did not take Kevin's group as sacrifices, but they also welcomed them very warmly. After entering the tribe, the people brought out fruits to treat the thieves. This made the thieves gradually lower their guard, but Kevin still believed in historical records. He thought that the Mayans would definitely sacrifice them after they had eaten their fill. Soon after, the leader of the guards led them to the palace where the queen lived. To strangers from outside, the queen showed closeness and tolerance. She did not care about their rudeness, but she also held a grand banquet to entertain them. However, at this time, Penelope was still thinking about how to steal the treasure, but first, she needed to eat her fill. During the party, Kevin took the opportunity to ask about the history of this era to prepare for further research when he returned home. Meanwhile, Penelope deliberately approached the leader of the guards. Her purpose was to get information about the treasure's hiding place, but in the end, she got nothing. When they thought that this trip would be in vain, the queen personally led them to the treasure. She also showed off the tribe's treasures. Those treasures were mostly gorgeous and shiny costumes. The group of thieves were immediately happy. When everyone everyone was not paying attention, Penelope easily stole a treasure. But Kevin saw it. He pulled her hand and put the treasure back in its original place, then told her that what the history books recorded was not wrong. The Mayans often fed the sacrifices first, then dressed them in gorgeous costumes. Finally, they brought the sacrifices to the top of the pyramid to perform the ceremony. At that moment, the queen also came to help prove Kevin's words. She said that she wanted to take guests to visit the top of the pyramid. Penelope was immediately shocked when she heard it. She did not expect that what Kevin said was true, so she quickly gathered her teammates. She quickly ran to the next passage. However, the passage was not yet open. Everyone stood at the edge of the cliff, looking at each other in confusion. I don't know what to do for a moment. They tried to use vines to get to the other side of the cliff, but it was completely ineffective. At this time, the captain of the guards led people to the back. They had no choice but to follow back to the pyramid. The thieves saw the queen slowly approaching with a dagger. They immediately collapsed and begged for their lives. But they did not expect that she was holding a knife just to peel fruit. It turned out that the Maya did not have a tradition of human sacrifice. The rumor that appeared was probably created by other tribes to create that lie to provoke war. Kevin immediately breathed a sigh of relief. It turned out that history was really like that. After that, everyone happily said goodbye to the queen. Next, they held hands and jumped down the cliff. They were about to go to another space and time. However, this time, before their eyes was a familiar bedroom. Kevin immediately realized that it was time to say goodbye to the group of thieves. He sincerely thanked them for taking him on a wonderful adventure. This would be an unforgettable memory in his life. The group of thieves also felt reluctant, but at this moment, a large rock outside suddenly exploded. The female hunter Fiona came out from there. Then she quietly entered Kevin's house. Kevin's parents downstairs realized that something was wrong, so they turned around to check. Immediately, the two of them were burned into 2 pieces of black coal. Penelope immediately realized that this was a trace of the devil. However, Kevin still did not understand what was happening. At that moment, Fiona suddenly appeared and shot fire to attack again. Everyone hurriedly ran back to the bedroom. They tried to use the time door in the wardrobe to escape. Kevin saw the bright white light coming from the wardrobe and decided to go back to the past to save his parents. Just like that, he and the group of thieves went through the time door. Fiona was 1 step too late. Fiona looked at the dark wardrobe, her eyes filled with anger. Meanwhile, the Supreme Being had returned to his heavenly base. The loss of the time map made him especially worried and nervous, because if there was a mistake when using it, it could lead to chaos, even cause irreversible paradoxes. Therefore, he and his assistant announced his latest project, which was currently a top secret. He looked at the beautiful star map in front of him and once again told them to keep it a secret, but he did not know that a nearby employee had witnessed everything. At this time, Kevin had followed the time door to the prehistoric period. This primeval forest was full of dangers. It contained ferocious prehistoric creatures. The group of thieves had also guessed Fiona's purpose. It was definitely the Demon King who sent her to steal the time map, so they did not hesitate any longer and immediately stood up to look for the next path. Unexpectedly, they accidentally startled a flying lizard. The group panicked and rushed towards the open path. Immediately after, the group fell into a new time space. However, Kevin did not go with them. When the group of thieves thought he had died in the forest, he suddenly fell from the sky. He was also carrying a dinosaur skull. Penelope quickly went forward and paid for the damaged house. Only then did they realize that they were in medieval Europe. This was also the period of the famous plague epidemic in history. The villagers saw 6 people dressed unusually. They were suffering from the epidemic, so they immediately thought that the group of thieves were evil witches. They planned to burn the thieves alive as a sacrifice. Fortunately, the dinosaur skull that Kevin dragged along saved them. They were immediately honored as dragon slayers. The village chief even planned to kill a few cats to celebrate, because during this period, cats were seen as the embodiment of evil in the eyes of the church. People freely hunted and killed them, but in reality, the uncontrolled slaughter of cats caused rats to run rampant in the city. It caused a serious plague. However, the villagers did not believe these explanations. They warmly welcomed Kevin's group. They earnestly asked the thieves to help destroy the cruel district chief, but killing people was not the style of the thieves. Penelope was about to refuse when suddenly an arrogant voice rang out from outside. The person who came was the district chief's deputy. He led a group of soldiers to collect taxes. When the village chief saw them, he proudly announced that they now had the protection of dragon slayers. The district chief should not expect to rob them of more food, but 2 hands are not enough to fight many people. 6 people could not fight a group of soldiers. Soon after, the group was arrested and thrown into prison. However, this group of thieves was not ordinary people. They easily escaped from the iron chains. Then they returned to the village they came from. Although they had successfully escaped, they could not ignore the plight of the villagers, so they decided to use the legend of the evil witch to help the village escape from the district chief's oppression. The next day, they created a smoke in the village. Then they told the villagers to wear white cloths and pretend to be ghosts. These tricks scared the guards, but they could not fool the district chief. They were soon caught. The district chief tied them to a stake. They were considered evil witches. Kevin saw the fire about to burn when he suddenly used his excellent speaking skills to convince the soldier responsible for lighting the fire. Even the district chief's deputy was moved. He was determined to become a good person. Together they did a great thing, which was to overthrow the cruel district chief. Then they sat on the throne they had always wanted. Thanks to that, Kevin and his teammates were lucky to escape death. This land also welcomed a new lord, but no one expected that the gate to the prehistoric world was still open. The flying lizard that had chased them had followed them through the gate to this era. It destroyed the buildings in the area. Faced with that situation, Kevin and the group of thieves immediately panicked and ran away. They planned to find the next way to escape to another world to take refuge. But at that moment, a large rock fell from above. They thought it was accidentally dropped by a cat, but in fact, the devil was following them. He plotted to create an accident to kill the whole group. At the same time, Fiona followed Kevin's scent to ancient Greece. She smelled the shirt and confidently continued moving forward. But if you look closely, the shirt in her hand was not Kevin's. It was obvious that she had taken the wrong one. So who was she following? It turned out that Kevin's sister, Saffron, had also discovered the secret of the wardrobe. After Saffron realized that her parents and brother were missing, she entered the wardrobe alone. Saffron wandered through different worlds looking for her family. She followed the same route that Kevin had taken. Fiona, because of the wrong clothes, is now chasing Saffron across the universe. At the same time, Kevin and his teammates arrived in New York City in 1929. Here they experienced the lavish life of the upper class. They also witnessed America during the Great Depression. They even formed a small gang of 6 people. They started smuggling mead and counterfeiting money. These 2 jobs helped them earn a lot of money, but it also quickly caused dissatisfaction from other gangs. The opponents captured some members of the group and even planned to throw them into the sea to feed the fish. Luckily, Penelope appeared in time and promised that the group would not smuggle meat anymore. Thanks to that, she successfully rescued the members. After this incident, the group decided not to stay any longer. They were preparing to enter another time. While the group was sitting around the fire chatting, a giant stone head representing the Supreme Being suddenly appeared. But this time, it was not the real Supreme Being, but the employee who had eavesdropped on the Supreme Being's conversation. His face was full of panic, and he shouted that the Supreme Being was plotting a terrible plan. He told them to quickly take the time map and escape. He emphasized that they absolutely must not hand over the time map to the Supreme Being. The group of thieves were immediately terrified and hurriedly pulled Kevin into a new passage. But why did this employee eavesdrop on the conversation between the Supreme Being and his assistant? Did he have any other purpose? At the same time, Fiona finally caught up with Saffron, but with the spirit of professionalism. When she realized that Saffron was not the target, Fiona spared her life. At this time, Kevin and his teammates had entered a completely new space. They were now standing in a castle with a beautiful garden. Looking at the architecture and the people's costumes, it seemed like this was the George era. In the evening, they attended a lavish royal banquet. At the party, Kevin saw many famous figures in history. They were enjoying delicious food and dancing, so they were completely unaware of the danger that was approaching. Every time they traveled through time, they always forgot to close the gate. This caused a serious disturbance in time. This was extremely dangerous. Therefore, the Time Investigation Bureau sent agents to find them. 2 dwarven investigators followed the trail. They discovered that the demons were also involved in this matter. They realized that the situation was extremely serious, so they immediately accelerated the investigation. At the same time, Fiona also found Kevin's whereabouts. Seeing the demons gradually approaching, the group of 6 immediately ran away. Fortunately, a new gate appeared right in front of them. They rushed in without thinking, but what they didn't expect was not a soft meadow or a mysterious tropical forest, but a dark vortex covered in fog. There was no light or air in this place. At that moment, strings from the black mist suddenly appeared and caught Judy, who had the ability to read other people's minds. They didn't know how much time had passed when they finally escaped the black vortex. They jumped into an endless desert. After a moment of celebrating their survival, they realized that Judy had disappeared. Kevin wanted to go back to save her, but the widget team's map expert said that they had never encountered such a situation before. The map didn't mention it either, so they didn't know what to do. Considering the harsh climate of the desert, Penelope decided that they shouldn't wait in place. She decided to leave the desert first and then plan ahead. So Kevin left a directional arrow in the sand to show Judy the way, but he didn't expect that this arrow would bring disaster to him. He didn't know how long the group of thieves had been traveling. Finally, they came across a busy group of people. After asking around, they found out that it was Mansa Musa's pilgrimage group. Based on this information, Kevin quickly located the history as 14th century North Africa. Mansa Musa was the king of the Mali Empire and was also the richest man in the world at that time. This time, the group also brought a lot of gold. Kevin talked a lot about the historical background, but Penelope only heard the 2 words, a lot of gold. As a thief who traveled through time, she immediately felt restless and wanted to act. But before they could act, the king saw the group of people dressed strangely. He thought they were poor wanderers, so he couldn't help but express his sympathy. He immediately gave them a pile of gold bars. Then he invited them to a dinner party, but no one expected that in just one evening, they would lose a companion. Widget planned to stargaze at night, but unexpectedly, he fell asleep in the desert. When he woke up, the group had long disappeared. At the same time, the king really liked the little stories Kevin told, so he made Kevin an honored guest. He was about to take Kevin to meet the king of Mecca, but unexpectedly, the two kings, upon meeting, argued about who should kneel first. The argument was extremely tense. Neither of them would give in. Kevin immediately suggested to King Mansa that if neither of them wanted to kneel first, they should kneel at the same time. And so a funny scene appeared. King Mansa immediately praised Kevin as a genius. At the same time, the missing Widget also caught up with the group to Mecca. After the reunion, it was time for everyone to leave. Kevin reluctantly said goodbye to King Mansa. He did not expect that he could feel an unprecedented fatherly love from this king, but he knew that he did not belong to this time and space. He still had to find a way to return to the past to save his parents. So everyone set off again. They followed Widget to a new passage. At this moment, Kevin suddenly discovered that the content in the history book had changed. The group that originally had 1,000 people had now become 6.05 people. The 5 people who added were him and the thieves. It turned out that they could really change history. However, because of this slight delay, he suddenly realized that the time portal had closed. He stood bewildered in the middle of the desert. There was no one around. He tried to jump a few times, and the next second he fell down. No one expected that the group would return to that familiar snowy area. But the time was still wrong. Kevin still hadn't found his parents. But here he met an unexpected person, his younger sister, Saffron. Kevin saw Saffron riding a mammoth towards him and felt like he was dreaming. He fainted immediately. When Kevin woke up, Saffron had taken him back to the cave to live. From Saffron's story, Kevin knew that it was an ice age tens of thousands of years ago. The residents here were all Neanderthals. During this time, they took care of Saffron, who came from another world. Kevin was amazed to see his sister integrating with the locals. He didn't expect that she could learn the language and customs of the Neanderthals in such a short time. Saffron even knew how to ride a mammoth, but Saffron told Kevin that she had been in this era for 3 years. During that time, she had been trying to find a way to enter the gate, but had not found anything. Kevin wanted to take Saffron with him, but he was stopped by the chief and the other residents. It turned out that they had long considered Saffron as a relative. Moreover, she had brought fire and advanced inventions. Therefore, they could not live without Saffron. Kevin had no choice but to put the topic aside. In the evening, everyone sat around the fire to warm up, but not long after, Penelope had an argument with a local resident. Seeing this, Kevin pulled Saffron away from the crowd. Then he took out 2 pieces of coal and told her about his parents' situation. He didn't expect that Saffron had met Fiona before, but until now, Kevin still doesn't know how to go back to the past. Seeing him sad, she is like a small son, encouraging and motivating him to never give up. Hearing his sister's energetic words, he immediately felt revived. The two hugged each other tightly and promised to find a way to save their parents together. After a long time of searching, everyone finally found a new entrance to the gate. Widget confidently affirmed that this time, the time was definitely correct. They could go back to the night Kevin's parents were murdered. But Penelope was very worried because that night there was both the Supreme Being and Fiona. If they went back there was a high possibility of danger. While the bandits were still arguing, Saffron entered the gate first. Kevin saw this and immediately followed. But unexpectedly, they did not go back to the night their parents were murdered, but to 30 years ago. Saffron was extremely disappointed because at that time their parents were still just children. But the girls quickly regained their composure and decided to split up and each go looking for their parents when they were young. On the other side, the bandits were about to enter the time portal when they suddenly discovered that they saw themselves in the future. They could even talk. This was beyond the bandits' imagination. Could it be that, as future Widget had said, time could really be folded? But they had no clue at the moment, so they decided to put those doubts aside for now. They turned around and entered the time portal. Unexpectedly, Fiona had also arrived at the same time. What kind of miracles would they experience this time? Kevin and Saffron had both found their parents when they were young. After a short time of meeting, they were forced to part with their parents because of Fiona's pursuit. Before leaving, Kevin told his parents to remember this demon. They then hurriedly ran away to a roadside shop. But something strange happened that surprised them. Due to the phenomenon of space-time folding, 2 Fiona suddenly appeared in this world. The group immediately felt that there was no hope for survival. In order to buy time for everyone to escape, Biddelig stood up and prepared to stop Fiona. After temporarily being safe, Widget continued to study the time map. He wanted to clarify what the space-time warp phenomenon that he had mentioned in the future was. He did not expect that he would actually reopen the time door and talk to himself in the Ice Age. Could this be the space-time warp phenomenon? Without thinking carefully, the group returned to the Ice Age. Penelope suggested that Kevin give up on saving his parents because no one knew whether they would succeed or not. Moreover, there were many unknown dangers lurking ahead. But at that moment, Kevin suddenly discovered that the 2 pieces of coal in his backpack had disappeared. After the initial surprise, he immediately realized that they had successfully changed history. The appearance of the Demon King later also proved his guess. It turned out that thanks to Kevin's reminder, his parents had prepared prepared for the upcoming danger. That night, 30 years later, they successfully changed the outcome of their deaths, but they were held hostage by the Demon King in exchange for Kevin. As long as he handed over the time map, the Demon King would release his parents. Knowing that his parents were still alive, a smile appeared on his face. After that, he decided to go to the Dark Fortress, the Demon King's residence, to save his parents. But the Dark Fortress only appeared in myths, so where should they look? The next day, the group decided to go to the mythical era, but unfortunately, the time map was missing a corner. That part was the entrance to the mythical era. Therefore, they were forced to find that missing part first. At the same time, an uprising was being plotted at the heavenly base. In another development, Kevin led his group back to the ancient Greek era. He was preparing to enter the city. He wanted to find the girl Cassandra, who had the ability to prophesy. Maybe she could help find the missing map. So they entered Troy again, but this time the city was occupied by Greek soldiers. The strangely dressed strangers were thrown into prison as soon as they entered, but thanks to that, there was a silver lining in the misfortune, because Cassandra was also imprisoned. Kevin asked her where to find the missing map. She replied that they had to go back to the last time the map was intact. The thieves remembered that the last time they saw the complete map was before Susan died, so they decided to go there immediately. But while they were looking for the entrance to the gate, huge waves suddenly rose from the sea. Immediately after, a huge mountain-like figure slowly rose from the sea. It was the ancient Greek sea god Poseidon. He held a huge trident in his hand, bringing pressure like a mountain collapsing into the sea. But as soon as he spoke, he asked them to return the map. It turned out that Poseidon was a supreme being in disguise. Kevin tried to beg Poseidon to help him save his parents, but the next second, Kevin was pulled into the void by the supreme being. The supreme being wanted Kevin to help him get the map back. Simply put, he wanted Kevin to become a spy. Kevin would have to take advantage of the moment when the thieves were off guard to get the map back. In return, the supreme being promised to help Kevin fulfill a wish. For example, ensuring the safety of Kevin's mother. Faced with this attractive offer, Kevin agreed. When Kevin left the void, he realized he was with the group of thieves. It seemed that no one noticed anything unusual. After a short discussion, they continued their journey. In the next second, they arrived at the time of Susan's death. But the time was wrong. They were one step too late. Susan was crushed to death by a large rock. While the group was to commemorate, Saffron spotted a figure near the rock. After the thieves looked closely, they realized it was Susan, the dead person. She was still holding a piece of map in her hand. The group happily called out Susan's name, but unexpectedly, when she saw them, she turned around and left without a word. Then she entered a path that was not on the map. Did she forget them? The group hurriedly chased after her. Then they arrived at the Qin dynasty in 220 BC. They followed Susan's footsteps, but did not expect that they would accidentally invade Qin territory. They were stopped by Qin Shi Huang's men. At this time, the Great Wall had just begun construction. Anyone who crossed would be considered an invader, but Susan took advantage of the chaos to sneak into the camp. Seeing that she was about to escape, Kevin immediately took action. Kevin kept praising Qin Shi Huang, which made him very happy. Qin Shi Huang immediately changed his attitude and agreed to let them pass. Kevin and his group passed through the camp and entered the next time space, the city of Kaffa, in 1343. At this time, the city was engulfed in war. The Mongols threw the bodies of the dead into the city. This caused the plague to spread throughout Kaffa. The chaos caused the group to split up and they lost track of Susan. Fortunately, she was also confused by the chaos and appeared again. The group immediately chased after her and blocked her in a narrow alley. Penelope did not understand why Susan ran away, even though they had stolen the time map together and decided to use it to travel through time. From then on, they became notorious time thieves. But in response to their questions, Susan said that she no longer wanted to be a time thief. The reason she tore off a part of the map was so that no one could find her. But unexpectedly, the group still tried to follow her like a ghost. Susan warned them not to follow her anymore. Then she opened the time gate and walked in. Looking at Susan's departing figure, one person could not help but say a word of admiration. But it was heard by the people in the city. They thought that this group was infected with the plague. They planned to capture and burn them alive. At that moment, Susan appeared from behind and called them to leave with her. Soon after, they arrived at a mysterious island. There was only one house on the island. Saffron guessed that it was Susan's place. Penelope carefully stepped up and knocked on the door. But unexpectedly, the person who opened the door was Gavin, her missing companion. Why was he living with Susan? It turned out that they loved each other and both were tired of the life of thieves. Since the group started their adventure, they had not achieved anything but were constantly in danger, so they faked their deaths to retreat and live in hiding on this island. Susan and Gavin's story shocked Penelope's group. It turned out that in the eyes of their companions, they were such failures. But Kevin comforted them that everyone had different goals. Although Gavin and Susan no longer needed them, he really needed their help. Having been affirmed of their value, they immediately regained their spirits. They decided to go with Kevin to the mythical era to find the Dark Fortress and save his parents. At that moment, the ground suddenly shook violently. The group rushed to the shore to see. As a result, they discovered that the island was slowly rising. It turned out that they were standing on a giant's hat. Knowing that this giant liked to help others, Kevin immediately asked for help. Kevin hoped that the giant would save his parents. Under the pleading of Kevin and his sister, the giant agreed to take them to the dark fortress. When the giant walked, the sea surface rose violently. Just a few steps, the group had arrived at their destination. They stood on the giant's finger and were placed on the dark fortress. After a long journey, they finally stood in front of the fortress gate. At this time, the sky was covered with dark clouds. The fortress was filled with lava. The closer they got to the dark fortress, the more clearly they felt the terrifying evil power. How could the mortal body safely overcome this danger and help them smoothly enter the fortress? While the group was worried, a demon suddenly flew out of the ancient fortress. It landed near where Kevin's group was hiding. It deliberately revealed the entrance to the fortress loudly. Then it turned and left. The group immediately followed. Sure enough, they found the secret entrance to the fortress. At this time, the group of thieves said that they could only help up to here. The rest were only Kevin and his sister who had to go through together. However, Kevin was not afraid because he had thought of a way to convince the Demon King to release his parents. That was to use the power of love to influence the Demon King. What a good idea. Hopefully the Demon King would accept this method. Before parting, the group of thieves gave Kevin the time map and they hoped it would be helpful to him. Kevin also promised that he would return the map intact, so the two of them decided to enter the fortress. But the next second, Kevin suddenly returned to his bedroom. He hurriedly opened the wardrobe but did not see the time gate. Immediately after that, his parents entered the room. They said that it was all just a dream. He had never experienced time travel before, but Kevin did not believe it because his parents acted so strangely. Not only did they seem very interested in history, but they also called Saffron his sister. Kevin immediately realized that they were definitely fake. He quickly put on his translation hat. Sure enough, the two people in front of him immediately turned into two demons. Kevin escaped from the illusion. After that, they saw their parents tied up. Kevin begged the Demon King to release his parents, but the Demon King demanded a map in exchange. Kevin immediately refused because Kevin had promised Penelope that she would return the time map intact. But at that moment, the group of thieves was also captured by Fiona and taken to the fortress. When the entire group was present, the Demon King once again asked Kevin to hand over the map. This time, he still maintained a gentle attitude, but when Kevin continued to refuse, the Demon King decided to use magic to steal it. But unexpectedly, he was unable to get the map. The kind Penelope explained that the Supreme Being had long ago set up an anti-theft system specifically for demons on the map. Only if they voluntarily handed over the map to the Demon King would he have it, otherwise he would absolutely not be able to force the map away. So the Demon King immediately used words of enticement and threat that as long as they handed over the map, they would receive what they wanted most. The group of thieves were very happy to hear that. They even intended to exchange the map. Kevin quickly stopped them and said that he wanted to return the map to the Supreme Being. However, the Demon King laughed at Kevin's naivety because what the Supreme Being wanted to do was no different from the devil. He wanted to use the map to create an evil world. The Supreme Being wanted to use it to wipe out the earth and return everything to its starting point. This was no different from destroying the world. After that, the Demon King didn't want to say any more nonsense, so he tortured the thieves and Saffron. The purpose was to force Kevin to hand over the map. At that moment, a loud explosion suddenly sounded outside. Immediately after, the Supreme Being appeared from the smoke and dust. He shot lightning into the hall. This unusual appearance made the Demon King unable to help but taunt the Supreme Being. But the Supreme Being didn't want to bother paying attention to the Demon King because his real goal was the time map, but he didn't force it. At this time, the Demon King reminded Kevin that the Supreme Being wanted to destroy all humanity. After thinking for a while, Kevin asked the Demon King to send Fiona away first. Then the Demon King took Kevin's parents home safely. The Demon King agreed and followed. Kevin immediately expressed his opinion that he could not accept the Supreme Being's plan to restart the universe. Although he had witnessed countless deaths and misfortunes in this magical journey, he had also experienced many good things and emotions. Rebuilding and rebuilding was not the best way. The world could not develop only according to the Supreme Being's will. Hearing this, the Demon King immediately intervened and said that if he had the map, even if the world became hell, at least human history and civilization would still be preserved. Seeing that Kevin seemed to be wavering, Penelope quickly stepped forward to stop him. She said that although she hated the Supreme Being's arbitrariness, the world could not fall into the hands of the devil. However, at this time, Kevin had made a decision. Under everyone's astonished eyes, he gave the box containing the map to the Demon King. Upon receiving the box, the Demon King excitedly set off fireworks to celebrate. The victorious villain must of course celebrate loudly, and at this moment, the Supreme Being could not believe that he had lost to the Demon King. He was angry and wanted to use force to take back the map, but the Dark Fortress was the domain of the demons. The Supreme Being's power was completely useless here. While they were setting off fireworks, Kevin and everyone else hurriedly escaped from the fortress. After confirming that it was safe, Kevin took out the real map from his backpack. It turned out that he had swapped the map beforehand because this was the blueprint of the universe. It should not belong to anyone. The Demon King received only a portrait of Kevin. When Kevin heard the angry roar roar from the fortress from afar, he smiled slightly with satisfaction. Who would have thought that the supreme being and the Demon King would be teased like that by a child? But he did not expect that there was only a damaged piece of paper in the box. So where is the real time map? Perhaps the answer will lie in the next journey.